been a while since I had this in any videos, and it's because it's been kind of sitting on the side of my garage while I was building the S10 and doing a bunch of other projects. The last time I really messed around with this thing, I went to the drag strip and was trying to get into the 9s, but the clutch was slipping.
Totally slipped in 4th gear.
So I went and put a new clutch in that shortly after that happened, and I just haven't been back to the drag strip, and it's been an embarrassingly long time. So it's time to get this thing sorted out and get back to the strip and settle this vendetta. Alright, so first order of business on getting this RX-7 ready to run 9s. We're going to start with the intercooler. So I put this in that car, I don't know how many years ago, and when I bought it because it has the rear exit and entrance. And that's the way it fits in the car, otherwise there would have to be a ton of weird piping running all over the place. So I tried to find another one that would be more suitable to my situation, because this one only has 2.5-inch inlet and outlet, where I'm running 3-inch charge piping. Now it's really not that bad. You know, it's pretty close in size, but it's definitely a restriction. It's definitely not adding power going from 3-inch down to 2.5 and then back into 3-inch. So, being that I can't find one, for a reasonable price that is, I'm going to try to modify this. Unfortunately, 3-inch doesn't fit on here too well, and it kind of sticks off the side, but I think I can work with that. And worst case scenario, I just spend a lot of money and buy one that has 3-inch exits on the back. But before we do that, I'm going to try to modify this and see what happens. So the biggest drawback I'm having so far is figuring out a way to actually cut these off that isn't super sketchy. I have a bandsaw, kind of fits, but it's not going to be able to cut all the way through without hitting the top of the bandsaw. We've got a portable bandsaw, but we're definitely not getting all the way through without hitting the other parts of the intercooler. Angle blaster is pretty much out of the question because there's no way this is getting all the way through. I think I'm gonna have to use a combination of things. I'm gonna try to start the cut on the bandsaw and then maybe finish it with a hacksaw? I don't know. I'm basically counting this thing as trash at this point, and if I can get through this and make it work, I'll be happy. Probably save myself like $700. Super sketchy. And for my last level of sketchiness, so one of the toughest things I have going on here is this is really just kind of a little too wide. So I think what I'm gonna do is oval this a little bit because it's gonna have a silicone coupler going over it, and that'll flex to it being a little oval, and I think it'll still work just fine. That's much better. So I got these all ground down flat, and now you can definitely see how big of a difference 3 inches compared to the 2.5 inch. So that should flow a lot better. Maybe make a few more horse puppies. I'll probably fully weld it on, and then I'll go in and grind all that out with the die grinder. That way I can't really screw it up and make it too big and make it hard to weld to. Well, it ain't perfect, but I think it turned out pretty okay. I've had a couple times where welding aluminum that's been exposed and kind of pitted is kind of tough and gets a little dicey, but if you get it clean enough, it turns out all right. And I'm pretty sure these welds will be just fine. So I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll start hogging out the middle in there. All right, so to finish clearing out the excess material in here, I'm going to use my little corded die grinder, and if you're going to use one of these on aluminum, you want to make sure you have an aluminum bit for it. You can probably get away with using the ones that are for steel, but they're not going to work nearly as well. These things just hog off material. So also be careful, because it'll take off more than you want real quick. And wear eye protection, like a whole face shield. Trust me. So we got all that extra material taken out of there, and you can kind of get an idea here of how much more flow this should have. But just to confirm that, let's do some math. So if we measure the inside diameter of this 3-inch tubing that I used, it's 2.85 inches. The old one is 2.19. Now, that might not seem like that big of a difference, not even 0.7 inches. But what really matters is the area, not just the diameter. And you wouldn't think there'd be that much difference in area between 2.85 and 2.19 diameter, but when you do the math, you can see that it's quite significant. I mean, the old one, 3.77 square inches. Now the new, 6.38. It's not quite double, but it's pretty damn close, and this thing's gonna breathe a lot better. So I'm gonna get this back into the car, and then we're gonna do some other stuff to make it breathe better too. So when I had this thing on the dyno, we made over 800 at the wheels, but as we were turning the boost up, it wasn't really making any more power over like 25 pounds of boost. But 815 or whatever it made at the wheels is pretty good, and I was pretty happy with that. But I think we can make this a little bit better pretty easily. So right now it's running the LS6 intake manifold, and this is the stock truck Gen 4 throttle body off the 4.8 liter Vortec or LS based motor. And this is already about 88 millimeters, which is plenty big. It's about the same size as my charge piping, and going any larger with that isn't really going to make much difference. In fact, it might actually hurt if I went too large. I might end up with more turbo lag. But this LS6 manifold doesn't really have a very large opening. So I'm going to take this off and we're going to take a look at it, and then we're going to compare it to something else that I might have stashed. So here we can see the Holley Ultra Low Ram versus LS1, LS6 intake manifold. And to be able to run the throttle body that I had to get this ICT billet adapter that goes from 3-bolt to 4-bolt. But also, it takes this opening here, which is the throttle body opening, and sucks it down into this tiny little opening. I mean, you can see that's pretty small. Can't get my hand in there at all. But this one, much, much larger. And that restriction right there, I think honestly is a pretty big restriction to how much air that we can get into the engine. And so having a much larger opening, even with the same throttle body, is going to make a big difference. So I'm going to get this puppy installed, and then we'll see if we can get it running.
things I was having happen before was there was a lot of lag before the turbo would kick in. I'm hoping this resolved that. So we'll do a little second gear, just a little pull, see what happens. There. Thanks for watching. See you guys pretty soon. We'll see how we do at the drag strip.